Doing way more than that. We're building an all-in-one app. Imagine property management software plus Uber plus Airbnb experiences, events, like imagine all three of those combined in one system. Right now, your housekeeping app is a separate app the residents have to download.
All right, and just like that, we are back again with another episode of the Mind the Growth podcast. As always, I am Chris Kinghorn.
And I'm Eric Hoffman. And we have a special guest today, a friend of me and a friend of the podcast, Konrad Koczwara.
Koczwara.
Koczwara. And I practiced it too.
How good of a friend is that, man? That's that doesn't start off well.
Hey, it's a tough name. Welcome. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. So, Konrad, can you give us just a quick intro of who you are, what you do, both personally, professionally, so the listeners have a better idea?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on the podcast. So, I run Elevated Living, which is a prop tech platform for luxury apartment communities. It's my full-time job. That's all I do. I don't do anything else. No, I'm kidding. But, I have a 1.5-year-old. So I have a family now, right? And I enjoy, traveling. I, work out, play sports. So I'm really big into kind of having that balance. Yeah, I've been doing Elevated Living, which has been my second baby essentially for quite a while now. So I had my first company that accidentally ended up in multifamily 9 years ago and saw a bunch of problems that, property managers were dealing with. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we created Elevated Living, which has exploded the last, few years. And, a lot of properties have typically not adopted technology, and it's been getting a lot more prevalent now that real estate owners are using more technology. So it's been really good. I cannot complain.
Great. And
that's
I
awesome.
think that's it.
So did you have a real estate background in the beginning of this, or what kind of drove you to that kind of ecosystem?
Yeah. So it's actually crazy what happened and how it evolved. But essentially, 9 years ago, I was really big into fitness, and I was working a part-time job as a trainer because it was flexible. I was able to go to grad school, do college, and it was good money. I was, at the time, this is when I was 17, 16 years old. My friends are making $15 an hour. I'm making 30, making my own schedule, and so I did training, and it was a great job. And when I went to grad school, I actually went to grad school for physical therapy in Northwestern Chicago. And I had to quit my job because it was full-time grad program, 9 to 5. And for a few months, I didn't really do too much, but then I'm I need to start making some money because these loans are piling up. And I came up with a business idea, which was Chi-Town. It was called Chi-Town Trainer. And, it was just out of the blue. And the plan was that we're going to do in-home fitness we would come to people, right? Almost like Uber, but for personal training, right? And, there was no plan to do any real estate, multifamily, anything along those lines. It was simply going to be B2C, and, people would contact us, fill out a form, we get them set up, and, it ended up evolving. So we started working downtown, and, we got we had these t-shirts that said Chi-Town Trainer. So people would see us, and these property managers would be like, who are you guys? You guys are just in all of our buildings. And before you know it, we got someone reached out to us and said, hey, we want you guys to do our fitness classes inside the building. And from that one building, we ended up getting 15 more buildings pretty quickly. So that's when I realized, I'm there's something here. It makes sense. It's almost like you're marketing to the building instead of relying on Google AdWords to get clients, right? You're like a captive audience, right? I started focusing on buildings quite a bit. And, from there, that's how I got involved in multifamily. And, within, a few short years, we did $1 million in revenue which was for me a lot of time. And I was like, how can I kind of get bored easily. So I was like, how can I do more? Cause it was just fitness. And I felt like I mastered it. I felt like I capped out on my growth. Like it was growing, but it was like, I wanted to grow horizontally. Right. And I talked to a lot of property managers and they said, they have all these apps they use, all these different vendors, right? So like there's a fitness company, right? There's an event company, there's a housekeeping company, there's a pet services company. They have apps to do maintenance requests, to pay rent. And I basically was just like soaking in the information. I was like an outsider of like multifamily. I had no idea like what they use. Like I didn't know what Yardi was or Entrata or, Real Page, or like no idea. So, I just soaked in the information, ended up saying, you know what, like, let me see some of these apps. Let me see what you have. And I saw that it was like really bad. And I was like, I can do a better job. And I was not like a coder. I'm not like a coder where I make apps, but I was always like a tech guy. And I was like, can't be that hard to figure out. Hire the right people to get the job done. Right. So, that's, ultimately like, how we started Elevated Living, it was basically just getting feedback from clients and coming up with a game plan to make things better. So I know it was a long side story, but hopefully that helps.
That's perfect. Yeah. So just to kind of level set, Konrad, you and I, we met online, and this was now about a year and a half ago when we were both expecting our first kids because our kids are roughly the same age.
Yep.
And the reason we met was because I loved your app so much that I wanted to buy it. And at the time, you were looking
Right.
at potentially partnering or selling or doing a number of different things, which we'll get into a little more specifics. But part of the reason why I loved it, and one of the long running themes of our show, because we have a lot of different entrepreneurs on, is a lot of great business people start in an area of business where they have absolutely no experience, but they have expertise in another area. And what that introduces is lots of serendipity to be able to see things a little bit different from the incumbents and be able to develop a business that maybe is more unique for the public, and the public really grabs onto it. So it sounds like that's been a theme for you as well, that you've just kind of found a niche and dove right into it with your experience in physical fitness and training and things like that, and just so happened to develop an app that properties seem to love. So one of my questions is, when you think of a business idea like that, how do you go about developing it? Because I think that's what a lot of people run into. Like, hey, I have a great idea for this app, or I have a great idea for this SaaS business, but I have no experience coding. I have no experience developing a technology company. What did you do when you thought, hey, this would be a pretty cool idea? Did you just go online to find developers, or did you know people? How did that work for you?
Yeah. So I think great question. I think definitely like I get asked this a lot, right? So essentially the best way to say it is Google, right? Google, like being a Googler, like when I hire employees now, like I value people that are Googlers and can do research on their own. And, I am a Googler. I'm a YouTuber. I learn, same thing with like reading books, right? All the, like, there's so many free tools nowadays that you can get just without paying anything that will show you how to get from point A to point B, right? And with me, I didn't have a coding background. I have no idea how to manage a software development team. I had no idea. And I remember at the time I was freaking out. But what I realized I had to do was ultimately acting like I know what I'm talking about. So, I ended up going on Upwork. I made a job proposal, which was very like just novice. I have it actually. I looked at like all my old stuff and it was like, I was like, how did I get away with this? Kind of knowing what I know now, but it was very novice. It was the worst probably proposal like for a job that someone could probably look at. But I met with probably 30 to 40 different companies, right? And I basically, from each one, I learned something new, right? So just by interviewing somebody for a job, you ask them, what do you recommend? What do you recommend I do, right? And they're going to tell you what they recommend. And guess what? On the second person you meet, you already know one recommendation. So that second person might say the same thing, or they might say a different way. So, from the 40 interviews I did, where I was narrowing down companies who I want to work with, who's going to make sense for us long term, I narrowed down, basically like it was a smaller kind of startup company that was similar to me. They're very hungry. I like their energy, right? And I ended up working with them to build my MVP, right? And again, I narrowed it down from 40 companies. I had no idea what I was looking for. I just needed to figure out who I can trust. I think at that early stage, you got to figure out who you can trust, because you're not an expert. You have no idea how to code. If they can screw you, if they can lie to you, you got to figure out who you can trust. And then from there, you can, as you go, you learn more.
That makes complete sense. And I'm going to step in here because I have
go ahead.
A very relatable experience. Konrad, I don't know how much you know about my story. Is I got into the tech world with zero tech experience. I had grown up in the construction ecosystem and decided it was a great idea to build a construction technology platform. And kind of here I am today. Kind of, it's funny, the learning curve that you described is something that I can relate to extremely. So one question, but maybe two answers. So if you could go back in time and give yourself two pieces of advice, knowing now what you know now about the process, maybe you've got technical advisors, you've got business advisors, et cetera. So if you could maybe choose one or two, each the important big things that you could tell yourself, X amount of years ago, what would those be?
By the way, I'm not a fan of like going back in time and like telling myself stuff, because I feel like everything happens for a reason, right?
But okay. So let's change it then. Let's change it then. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the future on a new venture? Maybe just one or two different pieces, if we think forward instead of backwards.
Yeah. So I would say, the one thing I would do, again, maybe better is, if you're developing a new app or whatever it is, right? I think you need to always start with the designs first. So like if I were to, again, recommend doing anything like from scratch, make your designs first. So make your designs, your prototypes one, and then get your like whatever costs, budgeting you're getting a developer for, like those should be first, because I don't think I did it that way. I think I did like a Microsoft Word document that described like, what I want, functions. I think it's much better to have a rough idea of like a wireframe. Even doesn't have to be like a final design, but a wireframe of how you want it to work, what buttons you need, and then keep it simple, because I feel like my first version of our app, I think I was trying to build a sales force. Like no joke. Like I laugh about this with people all the time. Like you read through my requirements, it's like I'm building a Salesforce CRM like on steroids, and I'm like, I don't need this stuff. You can easily connect to a Salesforce or to a HubSpot, so it's almost like, start small, because, you don't need to spend a ton of money to get your MVP out the door. You just need the basic functions, and you just need basic integrations with existing systems like Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever else you want to use.
No, that makes sense. I like to phrase that as keep it Sesame Street. So my development team has heard me say that way too many times. Well, I've got one more question, then I'll flip it to Eric. Do you guys have in-house development at this point, or what's the team kind of? Okay, awesome. Cool.
Yeah, we do. So it's a mix. Exciting. So I have I'm Polish, hence my difficult last name. So I'm a citizen in Poland. I am a dual citizen. So I have the capability where I have developers there and here. So it's not like our full staff is here only. We have some people here in the US, and then we have some in Poland. It's because it's lower costs. I mean, that's the best way to say it.
No, that makes sense.
And I would recommend that. I would recommend that. I feel like that's been my advantage. And that's the reason why I haven't had to raise money. If you're raising money, I mean, your software development costs are going to be outrageous. I've been able to bootstrap it for a long time, and I get the same features done as a lot of my competitors. If you look at my competitor apps, like Like our app, some people say it's better.
I
So,
love that.
yep.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And Eric's going to lag about 5 seconds because he's on the worst Wi-Fi ever. So let's move to you now, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks, Cox. So what I wanted to segue with, because you mentioned something that I'm curious about with your MVP product when you were first developing it. Are you able to share any details about how long it took, what that cost roughly was for somebody, who's thinking about starting a business and doesn't know, does this thing cost $20,000 to develop or does it cost $5,000? Give us some idea or experience there
Sure.
if you can.
So you guys are gonna laugh, or people that are listening are probably gonna laugh. But to me, this was like a lot of money. Like this is like me like giving somebody like a house for free. Like so it was. I think my first MVP was like 45K, and that was it to get like the platform live. So it wasn't that bad. So that was like our first, like we went live 45K, and then from there we started. We added more. We were adding more features over time. But it was, again, for me it was a lot because imagine you have one revenue stream, which is fitness, and you're
Yeah,
using that to, number one, pay yourself, and number two, pay everybody else that's involved, right? And then software development fees. So,
sure.
it was per month, even if it was like 5 grand, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Now it's like dropping the bucket.
Yeah,
And it
luckily.
was months.
And
I was going to say lengthwise, I forgot to answer that question. Lengthwise, I think it took like 2, 3 months. So it was pretty quick.
yeah, not
It was
bad.
like
Yeah.
a sprint, one big sprint.
And shout out to Upwork. You're not sponsoring us yet, but you could sponsor us, Upwork, because we've all used you many times, and there's a lot of great talent on there, despite what some people say. I love it. So let's take a step back in time to when we first met, and we were talking about your business. Can you give me an idea of where your head was at the time when you were thinking about, well, do I sell this and move on to a new project? Do I partner with somebody? What were you hoping for, and what spurred that moment for you, and what wound up happening?
Sure. So, ultimately, I think, when we met, I was looking at almost like bringing on a partner. I think that's really
Mm,
ultimately what I was looking for. So, I'm like the best way to describe me, like I'm like a sales, operations, products. Like those three things are like I'm really good at those three things. I kind of know what the business needs, know what where it lacks, where the strengths are, right? Like, so that's where I'm really good. I'm really good at building systems, putting people in a team, like even managing software developers, which I had no idea about. But I guess if you can manage somebody, you can manage anybody, right? So that's where I'm strong, and I feel like I'm not like the venture capital. I'm not the finance guy that raises money. Like that this is not my forte, right? And I felt like, I think maybe you could say frustrated because
mhm.
I had a really great product, clients liked it, and it's funny because when my idea of raising money was like, let's fill out a form on some VC's website, and see if they contact me. And like, but that's what I knew. That's what I did. And,
Right.
I'd get a meeting and they'd be like, asking me for all these crazy, financials. And I had like a small business. Like we were doing really good, but like it wasn't probably in the format that they wanted. And I didn't know kind of like how to sell them the story or whatever. I think also like because we were disrupting so many different industries, we were combining so many different things. I would run into VCs that said, "Oh, I invested in a housekeeping company." And I'm like, "Okay, I get you did that, but we're doing way more than that. We're building an all-in-one app. Imagine property management software plus Uber plus Airbnb experiences, events, like imagine all three of those combined in one system. Right now, your housekeeping app is a separate app that residents have to download. And it's funny because like some of these companies, there's a few, I don't want to mention them, throw them under their bus, but there's a pet company that did pet services for multifamily buildings, raised $2-3 million, went out of business. There's a company that with the housekeeping business, again, raised about 9 million, went out of business. So it's funny because I look back, I'm like, thank God I didn't take venture capital funding. it actually, I always say everything works out for a reason, because it made me become super lean, think about like capital efficiency. Um, and I was able to, you know, come out on top, I think, in a sense that, I found a new business partner, right? So what came out of it was like, I got a new business partner who has like a financial background, right? Did hedge funds, bought and sold businesses. So if I do need help on that, I have that, because you might, right? Like you land a big deal. Let's say I land a 40, 50,000 unit deal, right? I've been able to onboard, like if a multifamily company came to me and said, I have 20,000 units, right? No problem. I can handle that. We can internally handle that upfront, like those salaries those new people I have to hire upfront, right? I can bootstrap that. But if we get like probably 80,000 units that we have to onboard on our platform, I have to hire a lot more people. And at that point, that's where you go to someone who has financing capital. You say, hey, we landed a huge deal. It's going live in the next 6 months. We need some capital, right? And I, like, by myself, like I probably wouldn't have figured that out. But now I have a business partner where they'll handle that for me. I'm not gonna have to deal with it. And they're very like well versed in venture capital, fundraising, all that stuff, right? So, I think ultimately, I think I was looking for somebody like that would complement me, because until that point, I didn't have anybody. It was basically me in my own head making decisions. Konrad, or my way or the highway, right? So it's almost like it's nice to have that person that's like super high level that can give you that advice, from the financials perspective, right?
Totally. Yeah. So running a business, I always say is definitely a dictatorship, not a democracy. It's a lot of people misunderstand that, but also I remember when we first started talking about your business, and I was interested in purchasing it or being a part of it in some way. The one thing that I thought of, and probably the reason it didn't work, I was too poor at the time to be able to purchase it, but more importantly, I think you and I are kindred spirits in the sense that we have a lot of similarities and expertise in the strategy, the management of the business, etc. So you were definitely looking for somebody that was not me, and I'm glad you found them, because it sounds like it's a good fit. And it's interesting to hear that type of situation play out. And now that that's been done, where's the company at today, and what's the growth trajectory looking like over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, like last year. So like, ultimately one of the big things too with the deal was, I wanted to be able to run the company the way I want to run it. So I have that ability because I feel like I did a good job, right? And I felt like I want to keep doing it. So, one of the things that I liked about my business partner I have now is that I make all the decisions. It's like when I need help, that's when I go and ask for some ideas or help me get through this little situation that I have. But for the most part, I make all decisions, hiring, like strategy, myself. And, since so about a year, we've tripled our revenue, right? So it's been going really well. And I think part of what happened too was, and a lot of, I think, companies that bootstrap will relate to me, what I'm about to say. When you bootstrap a company, every month you're faced with a decision: do I pull money out, that 50,000 or whatever your profit is per month? Do you pull it out of the company, or do you hire more people? Do you reinvest it in a new feature, product, whatever it is, right? Like basically, do you pull it out or do you reinvest? And I think, over time, when you're doing something for so long, for me, it was, I think, 4 years at the time already, where I was, reinvesting for 4 years nonstop. It takes discipline to do that, to be on like a $70,000 salary where your business was generating way more than that and not pulling out more than that. Like you need to be very disciplined to do that. And, when I had a baby coming, right, my wife was pregnant, it makes you think about, like, if it was just me, I know myself, I would probably just keep going, right? I could live in a little, den, worst case scenario. But when you have a baby coming and you have a family, right? Like you got to get smart with, putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So, part of the nice situation about the deal that I made is that I was able to take some chips off the table, but still kind of do what I want to do without, it's almost like I de-risked myself, right? And now every day I wake up and I know that all the profit that we are generating, right? I'm reinvesting 100%. There's no battle in my head of like, do I pull it out this month or do I reinvest? It's basically like, and I was able to do that the last pretty much 12 months. That's what I did. I hired more people. We implemented a lot of new systems. I basically went all in on expanding across the US. Like, for example, when we met, we had probably one building in Florida. We have probably close to 50 buildings in Florida right now, right? So it's just kind of, when you put all the money back into the business and don't pull any pennies out, don't do any distributions, dividends to yourself, it makes a big difference. It's almost like you're a venture-backed company because all that profit you're just reusing to fund growth, right? So it has worked out, and I'm very happy. Like, it's definitely like challenging to bootstrap. It is. It's like a game of mental discipline.
Well, it's not it's venture strat, or it's venture backed essentially by you. You're the venture at that point, and it definitely makes you more cognizant of where dollars are spent and staying linked. So I really love how you have made that such an important piece, because it truly is, and the ability to limit the amount of VC capital that comes in. There's a lot of the decisions that are kind of taken away from you when those scenarios happen. So I think it's amazing that you've been able to do that. Konrad, can you give us kind of, because you'd mentioned the number of buildings in Florida, can you just give us a general idea of how many customers you guys have or how many buildings, kind of what that looks like just in regards to size?
Yeah, so I don't know if we already did or if we're about to. We're very close to crossing over 100,000 apartment units. So this year has been a big year. So like last year was a record year, and then like this year was even like crazier. So yeah, we're close to almost 100,000 units right now.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. And what's the headcount look like for you guys internally?
Our company's built. There's employees and there's contractors. So if you kind of combine, all of them, we have probably like a team of about 35 employees, like corporate employees, which also has grown. And then contractors, we probably work with, I call them partners, but probably have close to four to 500 partners across the US that we work with.
That's amazing.
It's a great ecosystem.
And in terms of the product itself, over the last 2 years that have been record years for you, have you noticed any particular aspect of the product that's been a big growth lever, like any service in particular, or what have you seen in the data over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think our biggest, so like it goes back to, I think our overall like capital efficiency. So like our platform is one, I believe it's the lowest cost platform out there. It has probably all the same bells and whistles that most, I call them like incumbent platforms have that charge more, right? But the biggest difference is based on like what I started with 9 years ago. So like I'm a guy who knows services. I know how to monetize services. And at the same time, if you go to a luxury apartment, what does everybody want now? They want everything on demand. They want convenience. And so I'm able to monetize the services. And I feel like our app is really good at monetizing services and bringing value back to the owner. So, ownership groups, they want revenue. They want they want to make whatever you're making, right? So because of my expertise in how to run services and staffing and all that, we've been able to be very efficient and make profit off of those things. And our platform just helps leverage that, right? Like our platform makes everything efficient. And it's almost like I built a platform in my head. Like I was like, here's how services need to work. I know how to build a platform to match that, right? And I think where a lot of tech companies that in my space are kind of failing is, they thinking more about features, right? Like let's build a feature, but they don't think about how does the back end operations have to run for a service or for staffing, right? They don't think about that. They build a feature, but that feature doesn't always maximize efficiency. Do you know what I mean? So I think like our app, where our strengths are on the, again, staffing services aspect that help kind of influence that resident experience, like that Uberization of services, right? Um, a lot of platforms that I've seen, that I've looked at, they just do like a link out. You want to get a dog walker, it just links you to wag.com, right? And you can't make money on that. Wag.com is going to pay you, they're going to pay you 1%. You're going to get a referral fee of 1% off of a $17 dog walk. You're going to get like one, maybe a penny and penny 0.7 of a penny. So it's just like, those things I think are where we win, right?
No, that's awesome. Konrad, can you so I love the vision. I think the product's really cool, and I was looking at the website a little bit earlier too to kind of like fully understand the suite of what it is. And you've got this idea of wanting to have as big of a suite as possible, or at least what you feel comfortable in, or that you would be almost an expert in providing service. So what's the vision with it in the next year and the next 3 years, 5 years? Where do you guys want to take this? Is it kind of getting to scale in regards to the number of customers, or do you have the product in a state where do you want to continue to build it, or are you guys just looking to scale it, I guess?
Yeah, so great question. So right now, like my primary focus is so the services I feel like we mastered, right? So my primary focus the last probably year has been how can we, how can our platform improve operations of a building, right? That are not related to services. Because the services we already have that bucket's done. We already figured that out. So, maintenance requests, rent payment, right? How can we add value in like bigger operational, things that a property manager has to deal with every day? I want them to be in my platform, just like you use, Salesforce for your, sales and marketing, right? Like I want the property managers in our platform every single day, and I want the residents in our app every single day. So it's almost like you have to, what I call it like opportunities to create engagement, right? So how to get someone to go into your app, you have to add value, right? So I've been focusing on access control integration. So opening doors, common spaces, smart home integrations, right? Thermostat control. So like that is my priority right now. Like everything, it's mainly tech related, which I believe is easier. I feel like managing people, services, all that's hard. Building features that are just pure tech related, where there's an on and off switch for something, and once there's no bugs and the bugs are all fixed, it works perfect every single time. That's easy. Like when we built, I remember when we first kind of built our first operational feature, like a few years ago, amenity reservations. So people can reserve like a guest suite or a party room. That was like our first real kind of operational feature in our app. And I was like, wow, this is so easy. It was so easy, and there's no issues. It's like residents are using it. We've had probably over 1 million reservations on that feature in that one little module since we launched it. And I don't hear any issues about it, right? Versus like when you're dealing with, housekeeper doesn't show up, they came late, like those are the things that are harder to do.
No, absolutely. Well, so one thing that's I'm really curious about is, so what do you see as being what do you see as being more important? The kind of the customer interaction or user experience for the landlord, the tenants, or the vendors that you guys work with? And I know that's kind of a loaded, difficult question, but I don't know if it's a hierarchy of priority or how I would describe it, but how does that all tie back into the business?
I would say this. I would say the resident should be number one, because, the property managers, what they focus on, I would say like majority of the time is financials, right? Managing the property, right? Like, so they're doing reports, and obviously like you want ease of access, like you want it to be for everybody, right? But I would say if there's a lot of things that residents do on a daily basis that property managers don't really go in and use the app on a daily basis, right? Like they might see the reports in there, they might see like requests for stuff, but the residents are your subscribers, right? So it's almost like the building is my client. The client of the building is the resident. And I call the residents subscribers because they have 12-month annual subscriptions and you don't want them to cancel because they have a bad experience. So it's almost like you want the resident to have a flawless experience, right? When they move in to the moment they move out. The property manager stuff can always be worked through. Like our app wasn't perfect. Like 4 years ago, like it wasn't perfect. But here's the thing: I would talk to my clients and I would tell them like, oh, like how do you want it to look like? How do you want this to function? We'll build it exactly how you tell us you want it. And like so with clients are more understanding because they know that you're working with them to build it the way they want it, right? Whereas residents, you have one chance. I mean, imagine you download an app from the App Store and it sucks. You're going to delete it right away. You're going to make an account. You're going to delete your account and you're going to delete the app. You're going to uninstall the app from the App Store or from your phone. So like you have one chance to basically show a resident that this app is good, right?
Prior to having our baby, I did not realize the amount of free time that I actually had in my day and how I squandered that so often. And now I'm probably more time efficient than I've ever been in my life because I don't have a lot of time. So I have to make it as efficient as possible. Have you experienced this at all?
I was always efficient with my time. Like,
you were ahead of the game.
I hate when like time is wasted. Yeah, and like I think when we met, I'll be honest, I think I remember like when we talked about like you having a kid, me having a kid. I remember I was like, dude, you don't know what you're into, man. Like it's gonna your life's about to end. Like you're gonna have no free time.
Let me tell you,
so it's one of those things where
let me tell you exactly what you told me. So when we were talking at the time, I was all psyched about the business because as people have now heard, it's a great business and really unique. And so we had a few discussions and then you just came out, you're like, dude, you're not going to buy this business. You're not going to partner in this business. You're not going to invest in this business. You're 2 months away from having a kid and you're not going to have any time. So I appreciate it, but I'm going to get somebody who can help me out. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's tough, like, having like, I don't know like how your support is, but I'm lucky that my wife, she stopped working and she's kind of, dealing with him full time. And I'll tell you this, like, props to all the females out there, the mothers, because, there's been days where I had to babysit him like the whole day. And it's a mentally like, like going to work every day, it's like you're strategizing, how am I going to, what's the plan for next year? Like, who do I have to hire? It's mentally exhausting, right? But like, I would say what's worse than that is watching, your 16-month or 18-month toddler for a whole day. Like you're mentally wiped out after that, like he's just like running around trying to commit suicide off the table. Like, it's tough. And, that's why, like I said, props to all the moms out there. I'm going to give a shout out, like, especially the ones who are working full time. Like, it's crazy. I don't know how they do it. Like, I tell all my friends now that work full time and have kids, I go, you guys are like gods. I don't know how you do it.
Shout out to my wife.
I've got a friend who she ended up continuing to work. Shout out to Rana. I've got a friend who continued to work after having a kid, and she took about a month off or so, and she decided that she was going to basically take her entire salary and pay for a nanny kind of during the day because she's like, I just can't be there the whole time. I need some sort of buffer, and I need to have some sort of separation. But
just for reference. For reference, that's what we did because my wife works full time and she is a rock star. And we tried out a few different methods because we both have our families here. They helped out at the beginning, but we got to a point where we're like, yeah, we need to hire a nanny. And she toyed with the idea of, not working and being a full stay-at-home mom and, that sort of thing, which she could have done and she would have been great. But she luckily has a great position, a great salary, and financially and mentally for her and us, it was a better idea for her to continue to work full time. And she works from home, so she still gets time with our daughter. And luckily, we now have a great nanny that can help out when we need it. So yeah, different solutions for everyone. But I agree, it's more than a full time job, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's like crazy.
Absolutely.
I don't think people that don't have kids understand it, right? Like,
yeah. How does that sound, Chris?
So yeah, I absolutely. I'm still a few years away from it. So I'm yeah, I've got some time. Konrad, so we appreciate the time, man. This has been awesome. One question that we ask everybody. So the name of the podcast is Mind the Growth, and we try to ask everybody the same question at the end of the podcast: is what does the word growth mean to you?
Growth. What does growth mean to me? Scaling, growing as a person. I mean, it could be business related, it could be personal growth. So I think you have a great name because you can kind of go, like the first thing that came to me was, again, because I'm like a workaholic, but the first thing that came to me was work. So company growth, right? But, personal growth is huge too, right? Like I feel, we even talked about it like when I first started on my little venture, right? Like I feel like now if I had to do it all over again, like, it'd be a whole different ball game, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, really appreciate you coming on.
I like it. Yeah, no, it's huge. I mean, and there's no wrong answer. So it's always a great open-ended question.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks. We're gonna talk soon offline, but we hope you all enjoyed the episode.
We're gonna edit the rest. Yeah, we're gonna edit the rest of it out, Eric, because you're skipping like crazy.
All right.
Eric, the audio guy is gonna have a fucking field day with this one.
All right,
Konrad, thank you so much, man. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, take care, guys. Thanks for having me.